So Kendrick Lamar just sat down with Harper's Bazaar magazine. Actually, he sat down with a journalist from Harper's Bazaar magazine and SZA, and he had SZA interview him, and it was a great conversation. I just finished reading through the whole thing, but we're going to talk about what he had to say about what "not like us" means to him, and I find it really interesting. So SZA asks, "What does not like us mean to you?" Kendrick Lamar responds with, "Not like us. Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent." Now, if you identify with the man I represent, and then SZA says, "Break the man down for me." He responds with, "This man has morals. He has values. He believes in something. He stands on something. He's not pandering. He's a man who can recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes, and can dig deep down into the fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling he's less of a man." If I'm thinking about not like us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that. So SZA follows up with, "Can I ask you something else?" Kendrick Lamar responds with, "Is it mean?" SZA says, "No. It's more like, I thought it was really interesting that there was any consensus at all that you might be an angry individual. For me, I don't find that any energy that comes from you comes from an angry place. And actually, the last hour and change pretty much solidifies that it's almost yogic, monk like, a yogic monk like place. So when you feel the surge of energy in records like that, where's that root? Is it anger?" Kendrick responds with, "I don't believe I'm an angry person, but I do believe in love and war. And I believe they both need to exist. And my awareness of that allows me to react to things, but not identify with them as who I am. Just allowing them to exist and allowing them to flow through me. That's what I believe." And then SZA says, "I'm going to quit while I'm ahead before I say something crazy." But yeah, it was a really good interview. Make sure, yeah, well, if you like reading, go read it. You feel me? I just finished reading through it. I have a bunch of screenshots, and I wanted to kind of walk through the whole thing, but I know this is TikTok, and y'all kind of just want the meat and potatoes, and for niggas to talk about the wild shit or the shit you were most interested in. So yeah, let me know if y'all want to hear anything else from this interview. Until then, I'm out of here.
That Kendrick interview was so powerful, man. And this is why I rock with Kendrick, bro. He's on there talking about the power of vulnerability. He's on there talking about allowing experiences to happen and not identifying with them. He talks about how he doesn't believe he's an angry person, but he does believe that war and love need to exist. He even talks about his masculinity and his femininity and how both of those things need to exist inside of you. Because yes, even as a man, you have feminine energy that you get to acknowledge. There aren't a lot of rappers that are gonna get in on an interview and be real like this and provide a different perspective for people, a different perspective for the children, a different way for the children. Because I can only imagine who I would be if I was taught that vulnerability wasn't a weakness growing up. Growing up, all I saw in men was hyper-masculine energy, even my own mother, because she was trying to be the man in my life that wasn't around. To have somebody who's probably the biggest rapper in the world right now talk about these subjects in such a real way, so powerful. And I'm going to be break down more of this interview on a specific level, but I just wanted to give a little summary of it. Go check it out.
Kendrick Lamar just sat down and did an interview with SZA, and he revealed what the term "not like us" means to him. That's right, man. It looks like Kendrick Lamar has finally sat down for, I believe, his first interview since the whole Kendrick and Drake beef. And this interview was for Harper's Bazaar. However, it was SZA that was conducting the interview. And in case you're wondering why SZA's conducting this interview, well, not only are her and Kendrick friends, but she's actually signed to the same label as him. While conducting the interview, SZA basically asked Kendrick, "What does not like us mean to you?" And that's when Kendrick responded that not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man that he represents. And after that, you can see that SZA asked him to break that man down for him. And Kendrick replied with, "It's a man that has morals, values, and believes in something and stands for something. Someone that's able to recognize their mistakes and truly dig within themselves to try and better themselves as a person." And I feel like the last sentence of this interview truly sums up how Kendrick feels about this entire situation. When he's thinking of not like us, he's thinking of him and whoever identifies with that. Truly meaning that not like us is bigger than just Drake. It's truly just about what Drake represents in hip-hop, which is honestly why so many people were able to relate to it.
Kendrick Lamar did an interview with Harper's Bazaar magazine, and now On one point, I'm excited that one of my favorite artists is speaking. On another point, I was a little scared because he's being interviewed by SZA, a former label mate who I wasn't quite sure would throw softball questions. Let's get into it. So SZA got into it. She said, can I ask you a hyper masculine question? You can tell me shut the F up. But what does not like us mean to you? This is the one that got the internet all clickbaity. And Kendrick said, not like us. He laughed. Not like us, the energy who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man that I represent, she said, break that down for me. That man has morals. He has values. He believes in something. He stands on something. He's not pandering. He's a man who can recognize mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes and dig deep down into fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he's less of a man. If I'm thinking of not like us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that.
Well, I'm glad we got the not like us definition, meaning, and expression so you lots can stop bastardizing it.
Now, this is why I say I was scared. Label mate, softball questions is going to give you pushbacks. Not going to be like Charlamagne the God. Now, can I say something else in that room? Or you want me to? Can I ask you something? What does it mean? Sis says, nah, it's more so like, I thought it was really interesting that there was any concession at all that you might be an angry individual. Sis is basically she's using, you know what I'm saying, corporate words here to allude to the beef and say, hey, listen, where did that energy come from? And then K-Dot says, you know, when we feel the surge of energy in the records, K-Dot says, I don't believe I'm an angry person, but I do believe in love and war. And I believe they both need to exist. And my awareness of that allows me to react to things, but not identify with them as who I am. Just allowing them to exist and allowing them to flow through me. That's what I believe. SZA says, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. SZA! I said, SZA, why would you quit? You were right there. Keep poking. God damn it. This takes me back to the earlier part of the interview. This one is not clickbaity, but people are not noticing this. I remember when SZA asked him, are you scared? He says no, because I've learned that I can identify with my performances on stage. This is good for young artists to read this, or up-and-coming artists, or just regular artists right now. I like this part. He's basically saying, listen, who I am on these records, who I am on stage is not necessarily, that performance factor is not necessarily the sort of attachment I place to myself as a person, right? Whether the critiques, the praise. So he gets into that. But this one's funny. It was the clickbaity thing. It's just that simple part, right? The rest of this is really good. He talks about his morning routines and stuff. SZA says, very honest. Speaking of honesty and ego, have you done ayahuasca? Kendrick Lamar says, I haven't done it. Well, Kendrick, why did you ask the Afro-Canadian to do it then? Don't recommend something you haven't done. Let's keep going. What I love, because Kendrick Lamar got personal in this interview, right? So he gives to me, when was the last time you cried? When was the first time you cried? So he talks about the last time he cried was on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers on the Mother Eye Sober record, which is interesting to me because if you remember the Hard Part 6, whatever, but I don't want to get into that right now. And then he talks about the first time, and this is the one that I really love, right? Like, the first time he allowed himself to cry, and it's being documented, he said on stage, y'all remember in 2011 when they passed the torch to him? And Kendrick says, yeah, my tears are all in the internet. But now I look back, I love that moment. I love that it happened because it showed me in real time expressing myself and seeing all the work that I put forth actually come to life in that moment. I'm here to tell you guys, listen, I can say whatever I want to say about that. You can say whatever you want to say about that. But it's stuff like this that makes his, I'm not even going to insult them. I'm just going to say his core fan base really, really, really love him. He's figured out how to be able to, whether in the music or sometimes when he does speak in these words, get like, because I don't care what kind of fan you are, you got to feel this. If you've never seen that video, go watch that video. You got to appreciate this part, right? Here, this is just like a personal favorite, kind of important to me. I think all young men, you should like this portion. Where SZA asked him in terms of his development, which one has been the hardest, and he said the last one, and that last one was the answer in which he, talked about his childhood and the vulnerability, and he said, he hates going back to having to learn how to be vulnerable, even though he knows he has to do it, because he says traumatized, and his pops, he was tough, he was militant. I don't know why this making me a little emotional, but as far as every day you expect to go to work, take care of your family, get back up, do it all over again, being a man type shit, right? And he never showed no weakness. He never showed any emotion that could garner a one up from the person sitting across from him. And I learned to experience that, not knowing I had the same traits. But for what I do, there's certainly no growth without vulnerability. If I had understood the power of vulnerability earlier, I could have had more depth and more reach to you guys, to the guys that was around me in the neighborhoods. That's dope. I don't give a damn who you are. That's dope. For people that are going to be in public eyes, and I'm going to get to the ending of this interview now, how I feel about it at the end. is where they're in a tough situation. To be vulnerable is to get people to be more attached to you, to get people to support you more, to get people more invested in your art. But at the same time, you have to kind of keep people guarded off. But at the same time, you have your own personal life. So I kind of maybe see what he's trying to say here, right? Like, he knows, going back to that part of his childhood, right? And trying to touch on that, so like, understand how to be vulnerable. He grew up around a man that was not that vulnerable, but it's a catch-22, because being vulnerable will help him with his art, and at the same time, not only with being vulnerable help him with self-development of his art, but it also help him, becoming, I guess, a better version of his father, low key. That's really what, right? Because you got to be better for your kids. Our parents tried their best, and he says in the bottom, our parents, they never had these outlets to express themselves the way they wanted. I've always looked at us as a beacon of hope. You understand what I'm saying? And that's kind of like the whole gist here. But anyway, I've yapped enough. What I felt at the beginning is not what I feel at the end, because I do understand that there's a battle. We just made a video about this the other day of what's going on with artists and journalists and who they can trust and etc. and how journalists intrude. So I understand that battle is going on. It is what it is. I've always said, but I still want these guys to speak. I will give SZA some credit for finding a way to get some of what I know most of you guys really cared about. And I will give them both credit for finding a way to even get more, personal, because my motto still stands. I want these ninjas to speak. And if this is what we're going to get from now, I'm totally cool with it. Thank you, Kendrick. Thank you, SZA. I'll take that.
Kendrick Lamar had a conversation with SZA, and SZA asked Kendrick about Not Like Us, and this is what he said. I'm going to just get out the way. You guys can pause and read it for yourselves. He also had this to say. Now, I ain't gonna lie, this reminds me of those Young Thug abbreviations where they were saying YSL was Young Soldiers of the Lord. Or when they said OP was overly positive, pal. This kind of reminds me of that. But anyway, y'all let me know how y'all feel about this in the comments.
About this interview between SZA and Kendrick Lamar for Harper's Bazaar. And also, let me know what y'all think about artist on artist interviews. Starting off strong, SZA asks Kendrick Lamar if he's an angry person, to which he says he doesn't believe he's angry. He does believe in love and war, though. Pause to read. SZA also asked what Not Like Us meant to him, and he said it represents who he is as a man. It represents him standing for something and not pandering. Claudette. But there were also really good non-beef related tidbits in there, like when Kendrick Lamar talked about how running gave him a lot of mental clarity and how he has the ability to distance himself from who he is as an artist to who he actually is in person. And I really love this little nugget of wisdom from Kendrick Lamar in particular, because how he explains it, it allows him to not judge himself for just being human and making mistakes. I also think Kendrick Lamar is the 7th man to ever be on the cover of Harper's Bazaar solo, so that's pretty big. What do y'all think about this? Let me know in the comments.
This right here, all of this, is exactly why Kendrick Lamar has fallen off in my eyes. That's really the energy of Kendrick Lamar, the type of man that you represent, really? A diss track putting another artist down is the best representation of Kendrick Lamar. Cause to me, this is Kendrick Lamar. Or this is Kendrick Lamar. But definitely not this. And don't get me wrong, I really liked the song. It was a fantastic listen. But it is a rap beef. It was a rap battle. That was not supposed to be Kendrick Lamar's legacy.
So I got this new album that's coming out soon. I'm really excited to share it with everybody. Is Not Like Us going to be on the album? Maybe? I don't know. My God, bro's milking it. He's milking it.
Kendrick Lamar was recently interviewed by SZA for Bazaar magazine, and we were able to get some insight on moments of vulnerability, his emotional journey, and the real meaning behind Not Like Us. When discussing emotional vulnerability, Kendrick Lamar reminisced back in 2011 when Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg handed him over the torch live on stage. Here it is. Kendrick Lamar said that was the first time he ever allowed himself to be vulnerable, and it was documented for millions to see. He does say that now he looks back at it in a good way because it did allow him to express himself. I really respect how SZA asked Kendrick some very raw questions. As you can see right here, she asked Kendrick when was the last time he cried, and he admitted to her that the last time he cried was when he was making the record Mother I Sober back on his 22 album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. If you're unfamiliar with the song, it is a very emotional and heavy song. He talks about trauma and the abuse his mother had suffered. SZA did ask Kendrick Lamar, what does his hit song Not Like Us mean to him? And he did not throw any shots at Drake. Instead, he says it represents someone who has morals, values, believes in something, and stands on something. I am going to take this interview as good news that Kendrick Lamar may be dropping soon. Let's not forget that SZA had put this on her IG story a few weeks ago saying mood because new K-Dot album is on the way. Let me know down below, what do you guys think about this? Do you think SZA is a good interviewer, and do you think we will be getting the Kendrick album anytime soon?
I figured this shit out, bro. Y'all want to know why so many people are really mad at Kendrick? It's because he's maintaining his peace and his poise even after winning the beef. He could have easily got on this interview with Adam 22, with DJ Academics, with all these different guys, right? But he did the interview with SZA on a female magazine. And not only did he not continue to perpetuate the beef, he took the opportunity to speak on some real shit, to really talk about life, the real life, and what it looks like when you start changing your decisions and you start changing who you are, bro. With all the eyes in the world on him right now, he continues to put out powerful messages instead of continuing to build on this thing. Just like Drake and all these other guys have been doing, continuously trying to flip the script, try to rewrite history, paying all type of bloggers and stuff to talk about it. Kendrick is really at peace and he's okay with everything right now. And people can't stand that. They wanted war in this goddamn interview. And that's the reality of it.
Kendrick, you gotta tell the truth. So Kendrick sat down with Harper's Bazaar magazine and got interviewed by SZA. And in the interview, he talked a lot about like his masculinity, among other things, as well as the meaning of Not Like Us. And to paraphrase, he basically said that Not Like Us is basically him standing on morals. Which I understand, but nah, I'm not giving you a pass. You call that man Drake a PDF file. We want to know why. We want to know the reasoning behind the disses. Besides the simple fact that you don't like Drake. Like, we want to know, like, now that the battle's over, we want to hear from you, Kendrick. And to do this interview where you kind of really just asked softball questions by SZA and cleaned it up. Now, do I think he's cleaning this up so he can perform it at the Super Bowl? Yes. But I still want to know some questions about this.
SZA interviewed Kendrick Lamar for an article. If you haven't read it already, please do. But I want to point out the specific part that actually made me cackle. Early on in the article, there's a part that talks about how Kendrick came in the room and then SZA followed shortly after. And as SZA sits down to start the interview, she goes, "Are you mentally ill?" And Kendrick Lamar starts laughing. I don't know what prompted her to say it, but it's SZA, so she could say whatever the heck she wants. But I'm telling y'all, I would pay good money to see footage of this exchange happening because that's just so funny. Imagine going up to Kendrick Lamar and be like, "Are you mentally ill?" It's so good.
Interviewed by SZA for Bazaar magazine. In this interview, he gave his explanation on what Not Like Us means. Now, as you can see, it says Not Like Us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. This man has morals, he has values, he believes in something, he stands on something, and he is not pandering. Now, this explanation for what Not Like Us is pissed a lot of people off online because they're like, who does he think he is? He's trying to be this over-intellectual person. It's not that deep. And I agree, because when you got lines in your song like, say Drake, I hear you like I'm young, and you talking about giving niggas wedgies, it's clearly a diss. But if you follow Kendrick Lamar long enough in his career, then you would know that an explanation like this is clearly trolling. I mean, the same way Drake be trolling, right? The man clearly has a sense of humor.